nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down, my brothers, on the ground. I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Scottish Rugby podcast brought to you by the Scottish Rugby blog, the podcast that doesn't know whether it's bitter or a troll account, according to twitter.com. Joining me this evening to answer that really important question, we have Craig Manson. Good evening, Craig.
Good evening.
And we've also got Rory Baldwin. Hello, Rory.
Good evening.
At some point, fresh from chaperoning a children's Halloween party, Johnny McGinty will be joining us at some point. He's presumably just trying to get a small children down from some sort of sugar high. If you're watching us at the minute, you are watching us live on either YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, or Facebook. You can also download the podcast afterwards on any good podcast apps that still exist. There's not many people keep destroying podcast apps. Google Podcasts doesn't exist apparently anymore. We're still on Spotify though. We're still on Apple Podcasts and any other apps out there still plugging away and being podcast apps. Podcasts still seem to be a thing, Rory, right?
I think so, yeah. But it's how people make money now.
Yeah.
Even though it is just the same as radio, really. Apart from,
it is.
I mean, talk radio, but
that's it. Maybe they should get us on. What's that talk radio station? Maybe we could. We've gone fairly. I think we've proven on Twitter that we've got it in us to join LBC.
Yep, I think so.
That's the next evolution in this podcast, Craig.
Am I not like to? What's the other one? The UK
GB News.
GB News. That's it. I'm thinking.
GB News, yeah.
Could slip down into that one and get myself in the mire there somehow.
You should see the numbers. If only GB News could see the numbers we do on Twitter these days. But that's, I mean, it would rely on us get like lots of South African and Irish people listen to LBC and GB News because they're the ones that get us. They're the ones that we manage to get outraged the most.
I can also confirm we're on Amazon Podcast too. I've just had a look. We
are, and that's the what you can say if you say to your Alexa, and as far as I know, this is still the case. If you say Alexa, play the Scottish Rugby podcast, it plays us, which is very exciting.
As opposed to play a Scottish Rugby podcast, which could get you anywhere.
And no, I think that's still us. I think you have to say play the official Scottish Rugby podcast for it to be the official SRU one.
Sorry, that's first come, first serve.
Absolutely, yeah.
You were ahead of the game, not just search engine optimized, but AI optimized as well.
Yep.
So we've got a bit to get through. There's been a whole heap of news and some stuff happening over the weekend. You guys recorded on Friday, kind of midway through a World Cup semi-final.
Best time to do it.
That's it, exactly. There's nobody. Let's face it, nobody in Scotland was watching that semi-final.
Not really, no.
I was stuck in a hotel in London watching it on the telly. It wasn't. It was a Premier Inn near King's Cross. No hotel near King's Cross is pleasant.
Whoa. Yeah, I was going to say. That's a fantastic place to be.
No, it's because of all the rain, I couldn't get north. There was no way, no trains were going north, and they cancelled all the trains, so I had to stay in London for the night. So yeah, I watched an incredibly unbalanced game of rugby on the telly instead, and had a pizza.
Excellent.
Yeah. So we've covered the WX2 from last week. We've got the game to look forward to. We'll touch on that in a minute. We might get. I think probably what we'll do is we'll save the World Cup chat for the Patreon section of the podcast. The big news this week, I suppose we should talk about the global calendar, and we can talk about it. I suppose we'll spend a few minutes talking about it here, and then we'll probably get more into it in the Patreon podcast. But Rory, once again, World Rugby have come up with something they claim to be revolutionary and that will grow the game in so many different ways, but that somehow just serves to protect the interests of those at the very top.
Yeah, I mean, there are some very well-dressed turkeys at the top of the tree who are definitely not voting for Christmas. I can you can see why they've done it. So it keeps everything in a nice, neat little bubble that they can control. I'm right in thinking that the top tier of the league is controlled by Sanzar and the Six Nations, and the rest is controlled by World Rugby. So you can't even really blame World Rugby if anything goes wrong with it, because they're not going to have much say in it. It does seem you'd be feeling pretty hard done by if you were Portuguese or Chilean or Uruguayan and fancying, a chance. I think it will, as far as I could see, it's going to sort of even out a bit in 2030. But that's quite a long way away. I might be dead by then.
This podcast will still be going.
Yeah,
we may have
I would hope so. It'll be my legacy.
We may have decided at that point whether we're bitter or trolls. We may have finally settled on which way to go. It is disappointing, Craig, I suppose, in that this was always sold as Gus Pichot's idea, a bit kind of way to revolutionise the game, to get the smaller teams, the tier two, what are traditionally the tier two teams, although we decided to reinvent that during the World Cup, but traditionally the kind of your developing nations, a chance to play the tier one teams more often. I think Scotland we've always been good, partly through, let's be honest, partly through necessity, because we've to get the games, we've had to go out and reach out to kind of the developing nations to get the autumn tests and to get the summer tours. But also that, even when we've got better more recently, we've still hosted the more developing nations at Murrayfield and put on some good tests. If anything, this makes it worse, I think, because you're not going to have a Georgia now at Murrayfield in the autumn.
You see, this is a big issue for me, is the fact that, and no matter what anyone says, as we have seen with the Scottish women's rugby team, there is only so far for hopes and dreams. You need to actually put some money behind it. And all of these smaller rugby nations need a little bit more money, and they need the gate money from a Twickenham or a Murrayfield or an Eden Park. They need the extra money, and until that's sorted out, then I don't think it's really going to do a huge amount. I want to see more teams playing. I want to see Ports, because there's not very many of us that can turn and put their hands up and say, well, we knew Portugal were going to be fun because we've seen this game and that game and the other game. They were all kind of quiet, and we didn't really know. I hadn't really seen much from Portugal, apart from I knew that they'd had that Johnny Sexton preparation game with the Irish. So you want to see them out in front of TV. You want to see them in front of the rugby public, and I don't think it's really going to happen still.
No, and Johnny, one of the kind of few things I think that have been exciting about this particular World Cup have been Chile and Portugal, and just seeing the kind of their journey to the World Cup and the kind of them getting to play against some of the bigger teams, and even Portugal did the upset against Fiji, and the door's closed to them now effectively until the World Cup.
I don't know if I don't know if Johnny wanted to answer that question or not. He seemed to be,
No, he's deep in thought. He's staring intently at his computer.
yeah.
We'll come
Sorry,
back to Johnny.
Aircraft Goblin.
He's Johnny's fast forwarded. He was so outraged by the concept of not being able to see Portugal in the World Cup again.
He's just sad because he thought he might actually get a chance to play for Chile.
He used to have to move to Billet. There's at least there's Mark who's we've
I
dealt
think I'm semi-back.
we've spoken to it before. He is semi back. Well done. We've got a semi Johnny anyway. Hello, Johnny.
Yeah.
Can you hear us? Can you hear us, Johnny? No.
Yes, kind of.
I suspect he's going to reply in a few seconds. Yeah.
This is
Yeah,
God.
there we
This is like speaking to somebody in the. You're not in a war zone, Johnny. It's like I speak to somebody by satellite phone.
I mean, it's Fife.
Well, that's true.
Hey, wait a minute! I'm just along the road from him, and I'm perfectly fine. It's just it's backward Fife that he's from. That's the problem. And he's second Tory home that he's got out in the wilds there.
We'll let Johnny struggle on for a little bit more. The other kind of part of this, Rory, is that the World Cup is now going to be extended, so we're going to have more teams in the World Cup, but we're also getting an extra knockout game. And I looked at this because I remembered this, and I couldn't remember when we'd had it. I think it's the 1999, well, not the 99 World, well, the 2000 and
There was 87 and then
it was one of the 90s one. I'm trying to think when was it 1999 was 1999 a World Cup year?
95, 99 probably would have been now.
Yeah, so the 1999 we got that extra round of games, which was like essentially playoffs of the best place of the second teams and the best placed third teams had like this extra knockout game. And so I suppose it prolongs. It might give Ireland 2 knockout games to play. It probably means that we get an extra game out of the pools, even if we end up in a pool of death.
Yeah.
I quite like it. I guess I think that doesn't necessarily solve the underlying problem is that nobody can watch the World Cup because nobody can put clips on Twitter without them being taken down. So I don't think an extra round necessarily solves the problems of exposure.
No, and I don't. The expansion is only probably well and good if the extra teams that are coming in have had meaningful competition in the intervening 4 years. Some of them will, to an extent, with the Pacific Nations Cup, which is going to get the Pacific Islands, Japan, USA, and Canada playing. But the likes of Portugal, the likes of Chile, Uruguay, probably Namibia too, are going to have the same amount of no games against top tier opposition. I'm not sure what the new Rugby League Nation Cup competition, whatever we're calling it, is doing for tours. Is it going to just ignore tours? I mean, I know the Lions tour, they've somehow managed to make the Lions tour a global a priority for the global game and shoehorn, make sure that that's touched. So yeah, I quite like the idea of expanding the World Cup. They are going to need to do something about the scheduling. If they can somehow find a way to have the games kind of rolling, so that there's almost a game every day, every couple of days, like with a football World Cup, but at the same time make sure that everyone's getting equal breaks and not just shafting the lesser teams by giving them 4-day turnarounds while everyone else is playing the prime time fixtures on a Saturday night. I think it will give more games to them, but it's the whole problem with the game that this league was supposed to address is the exposure to decent fixtures in between World Cups, and it hasn't really, from what I can see.
Yeah, Johnny's back. Are you back with us now, Johnny? Give us a wave to show us you're alive.
I seem to be. Yeah, I can't. This
Good.
is what happens when I come on early and I don't get my goblins out the way.
Okay. Hopefully you've dealt with them. Speaking of goblins, World Rugby released a report today looking at kind of money in the game. And what was interesting about it is it kind of identified the USA particularly as a kind of potential bigger market for rugby. And surprise, surprise, the teams that are prioritized for getting kind of more games and being part of kind of the Americas kind of format of tournament that we're getting are USA and Canada, who are pretty much as unions as I understand it, functionally bankrupt, and yet are getting
Canada's
priority for games over the likes of Portugal and Chile, who are, from what I can tell, are very well run and probably better than USA and Canada in terms of the standard of the teams as well.
Yeah, but what America also got is a World Cup.
Yep.
And with a decent bit of investment, with the player pool that they've got and some of the talent that they've already produced, and some of the players they can capture along the lines of sort of like Jack Carty and stuff, who is qualified for America, with a little bit of nudging from World Rugby and some decent investment, looking at the format of that Pacific Nations Cup or whatever it is they're calling it, what America might do with that before they get to host the World Cup is win it. And that's the sort of thing that gets American people interested, I think. I get the feeling that it's all a bit of like a sort of well stage managed stitch up to get America winning that funny new trophy and then hosting a World Cup on the back of people suddenly being interested.
And then we give everybody an extra knockout round in the World Cup so that they're guaranteed an extra game out of the pools.
Yep.
See?
Yeah. They're not, I would say they're not daft, Craig, but they are daft, because the other thing, as Rory said, was that that we're making room in the schedule for the Lions tour, which, let's put the men's Lion tour to one side. They're creating a women's Lions team now. I am not opposed to a women's Lions team or the principle of a women's Lion team. I think what my worry is that we've got the WXV tournament. I think that's been a great thing. I think it's a good way of teams playing each other, and once we get relegation promotion, I think that'll be even better. Do we need to create a women's Lions team, or could you not? If you were starting from scratch, you don't have to go back to just because the men have a Lions team, we need a women's Lions team. Is there not another? Could you not have a North and a South best of with some tours or something? I'm not
Show the way.
Yeah, it doesn't have to replicate, Craig. It doesn't have to replicate what's already gone before in the men's game.
Yeah, I think I would far rather see, and this is going to go slightly sideways, but I would far rather see with the women's game, let's do a North and South all-star game, where we have, Italian players, French players available for selection. I also wouldn't want it to be, the problem with our British Lions and Irish Lions. Sorry. Careful. I think the problem with something like that is it's just going to be filled with it's going to be a Red Roses team, and that's not really what we want to see, or is it what we want to see? Well, it's probably not what the other nations involved want to see, but that's what the Lions would want to see, is just this Red Roses team going down and winning a Lions. Yippee, look at us, we're slapping around the other nations, although England couldn't win a World Cup.
Yeah, and they're is there not, they've made room in the schedule for it so that whatever it will be, whatever this event in the women's calendar will be, so that it doesn't interfere with WXV1, leaving out the potential contributors to the Lions, to a Lions side, or even on a Northern Hemisphere side that might be in WXV2 or even WXV3.
Yeah, and that's
winning.
Well, that's where I would, and this is where I tend to lean against. For example, I know that we had the World XV v the Barbarians, was it? And we had in the men's game, and we had some questionable choices of players, but you got to see some of the superstars playing together. And I think there's an opportunity to grow the women's game, to bring in some of the women's superstars to play against each other in a northern and southern hemisphere. Either that, or you do a league like you do the Americas, and you do the that takes in Canada and the USA and and Argentina, etc.
Like a sort of global world league.
Almost, yeah. And like so. I don't know. It's a difficult. I'm not so sure about the Lions thing, because I think the Lions thing will just become like it was before. It's all English players, and then with one or two Six Nations team players on the subs.
You could get Gatlin to coach it though, then it wouldn't be all local players.
That's very true.
I do get a bit why women's players would want a Lions team, because for some reason in everything that's come and gone in rugby in 100+ years, the Lions has kind of retained the prestige. So like being a Test Lion is still pretty much the best thing you could do as a British or Irish player, men's player. So I can see why women would look at it and be like, we want to have that as well. But for me, I think especially with the personalities and stuff that we've got in the women's game just now, the Lions is a bit po-faced and a bit serious. And I think something like an All-Star game would be much more entertaining and much more fun. Can you imagine the press that Rona Lloyd and Ruby Tui could do in the week in a lead up to an All-Star game, like a North versus South game? It'd be brilliant. And it would just be a much more interesting thing to be a part of.
And I get the prestige of the Lions. I mean, I've got my Lions top on tonight, but I also kind of think the Lions it's a bit of a relic of a bygone age. And, there's something nice. There is still something slightly romantic about Lions teams going and playing provincial teams. But at the same time, I think more and more, because of that was fun in the amateur days when actually some of those games were quite close. But now it's Lions teams going and running 100 points past provincial teams and
trying not to get injured.
Until the 3 test matches. It just seems a massive waste of time. I think the Lions itself probably needs revising, but that's a discussion for another day. We'll carry on this discussion in the Patreon podcast. There's a lot more to unpick with that announcement of the new global calendar. I wanted to talk about the WXV2. We've got Scotland, Japan coming up. It's a good opportunity for Scotland to kind of move up the world rankings a little bit more. As an opportunity, Craig, to win the WXV2 as well. Kevin's done his normal computations, and there's a table on his Twitter account. Kevin Miller, top of the moon. He's done all the different permutations of how Scotland might end up winning this. But one of the things for me, Craig, I was thinking about is, there hasn't been a lot of movement in the world rankings for women's rugby over the years, but this, I think, is a really good way to have that. You've got, Scotland playing teams they haven't played for a long time. And, when was the last time we played the USA?
Mm.
And it's a really good test of where Scotland are right now in terms of the, world rugby. And actually what it's shown is Scotland are in a really good place.
Yeah. And for me, I'm just incredibly pleased at what we're seeing with Scotland at the moment. We're able to talk about Scotland potentially winning the WXV2, and we talked about it last week. Those are the 2 of the games we've just played are games that we could have lost very easily 2 years ago. So we're in a position where we've got some fantastic players at the moment. Some of the original players that were maybe 2-3 years ago were maybe doubtful of, actually they've upskilled. They're working incredibly hard with the new money that's gone into the game and a coach that's been there for a period of time now. So it's really exciting for women's rugby in Scotland, and I think it's a good opportunity. I really I'm concerned if we end up eventually going into WXV2, WXV1 or just WXV, how we'll survive up there. But we're doing a good job at this moment in time, and I'm really happy to see it.
Yeah, we've said on previous podcasts, Johnny, that actually it's done Scotland well to be in WXV2. I think just to kind of find the feet, find the place, find the level. I'm not sure that going and getting absolutely spanked rotten in WXV1 week on week would have taught them anything.
Yeah, I think that for all that the preparation for WXV and the communication around it and stuff wasn't that great, they do actually seem to have arranged it in quite a sensible way. I think we all spent summer going, I don't understand how this works. I don't know. We don't know when Scotland are playing, who they're playing against, what to like. there's been nothing put out. Now that it has come out, it's all three of them seem to be quite well organised, and WXV3 possibly a little bit lopsided because Ireland are putting 100 points on Kazakhstan and stuff. But the top two, they seem to be quite well matched in terms of levels, and we've had some really, really good games, and Scotland seem to be basically exactly where they need to be. So it's worked out quite well, I think.
Yeah, and obviously for Scotland, Rory, it's good to see some of the younger players coming through. I think we've said in previous podcasts, just you can swap. There's not a drop in quality when you're swapping players in and out.
Yeah, the bench has been quite good. I mean, they've made a couple of changes for the bench on Friday, tomorrow. But other than that, it's the same team. So it's the same team that beat South Africa, the same team that beat the USA. So a bit of continuity. That's good for them, I think. And yeah, the players are still pretty young. We talked about it last week. They're some of the women that have been doing really well are 20, 22. Even the veterans are not. They're not that old. Mid 20s. So I think they needed this experience, and actually getting experience of winning will help. As you say, rather than experience of maybe getting beaten. It'll be interesting to see how they go in the Six Nations. Obviously, Ireland have been down in WXV3, but what are they going to be learning from that? I think these games are going to probably be the most benefit for Scotland. But yeah, it'll be a step up come the Six Nations, I think.
Yeah. We obviously got Scotland Japan on Friday. I think it's on iPlayer now, which is great.
It should be, yeah.
It's been on not that the Rugby Pass is as terrible as Rugby Pass is as a whole concept. Actually, the coverage on Rugby Pass has been fairly good, but it's great that it's going to be on iPlayer for those that want to watch it. I think someone pointed out there is a gap in the BBC One Scotland schedule on Friday afternoon. Whether or not that gets filled with Dotterman, we don't know yet. We'll see. There's a Craig. Just
that was a great reference, to be fair.
It was, thank you. Tomato sauce is the only thing I remember from Dotterman. Tomato ketchup. It's the one thing it taught me. Should we talk about the URC then, as a kind of final roundup on the main podcast?
Oh yeah, we definitely should.
Let's start with Edinburgh then, Craig. They dug themselves out of a hole.
Yeah. Let me rephrase that. Ben Healy dug us out of a hole.
Ben Healy dug you out of a hole. But you've got, Ben, I think one of the things we kind of, I think Munster fans would know this already, but having a reliable kicker is not something to kind of be sniffed at.
No, and I think, we've for example, the king himself, Boffelli, has got us out of a fair few holes previously. But he... Sorry to all the backs out there, but the fullback can't influence the game as much as a 10 can. And to have a reliable kicker...
Excuse me?
So is there a delay there for some reason? It was like... But having a reliable kicker at 10 as well works, especially at this time of the year when we have all of the superstars are away or resting or whatever they want to do. So, I have to say, for me, considering my fairly lukewarm reception to the coaching staff, etc., that have gone into Edinburgh, and my maybe doom and gloom feeling about Edinburgh at the moment, I think coming away from Dragons, we've been down to Dragons before with a full squad and come back with a loss. So to come back with a win, we have to be happy with that and actually be happy that we've got Ben Healy on board and he's played well. Him and Ben Velicott look like they're going to be fairly decent together as well. So, we'll see how we go.
I suppose that's the thing. Rory, with Edinburgh, the difficulty is that they have a head coach. Is that what they're calling him? Has he been named
senior
officially
coach,
the head coach?
Senior coach.
They have a senior coach.
Yeah.
But there is still a lot of uncertainty swirling around Edinburgh because there was talk of once the World Cup's over, there'll be a bit more news, but it's the final this weekend and there's not been much more news.
Well, maybe they're waiting for to announce Razzie on next week. Razzie or Fozzie.
Hang on, let me just open this window so I can throw myself out of it, please. Thank you.
I mean, yeah, there might be somebody who's involved with one of the World Cup teams that's gonna. I don't know. If he's not the head coach, what? Because Everett's like a kind of forwards guy, is he, or is he a backs guy?
I was under the impression he was.
I think he's a backs. Yeah, attack. So maybe there's a sort of maybe Razzie is coming after all. I'll have to. Who
would the 7 forwards on the bench be for Edinburgh?
Tell you, we have got a fair few.
I mean, Edinburgh have got enough back rows. They could probably put something together.
You could do a 6-2. You just name Darcy.
Yeah, they could unreject him.
If they hadn't rejected Quagga Smith, they could be doing a 7-1 right now. Well, I mean, they couldn't because he's still in the World Cup final.
I'll tell you what. Let's just say one thing. Forget about Quagga Smith, but the Sharks will be sitting there smiling right at this moment in time after re-signing Oxenjay, I should say, because Oxenjay, I know, was available to be signed by several teams in the Northern Hemisphere, and I'll tell you what, the Sharks are probably sitting there. I hope they're sitting there rubbing their hands and wearing their lucky underpants because they've done a very, very good job of getting him to re-sign.
You've not got a lot. We've got some of the big names, I think, are back in training. Peter Schumann's off to South Africa because of a family bereavement, which is going to be a big loss for Edinburgh up front. No news at WP. Is WP now still playing?
Yes.
He's still rumbling on, is he?
He's still in the squad at the moment.
Yeah.
He can be in the. I'm sorry, but VP can stay in the Edinburgh squad until he's 55. It doesn't matter. He's got enough credit in the bank for Edinburgh.
Still rumble him on at 75 minutes to have a last scrum.
Yep, to throw the ball between his legs and then to get a couple of scrum penalties, and then that'll be him. He'll walk off, just sticking the power belly out as he walks off, thinking, "Yep, my job is done."
Unless someone spots him in the defensive line
2 games in a day, up 40 last season. I'm pretty sure that WP can manage.
Yeah.
Brock Harris played for Stormers and Western Province in the same day. So VP's got plenty of time. Who was it did that for Scotland? Played for Dragons and then sat on the bench for Scotland in the autumn. Once was that wasn't Ali Price, was it? Was it George Horn?
Played against Dragons or for Dragons?
Yeah, they played against Dragons for Glasgow, and then Scotland got in. Then they'd end up on the bench for Scotland.
The next day. Ring a bell.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. I can't remember what I had for my breakfast, so you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
That might be.
If anyone's, it was someone. I don't think they got on at all for the Scotland game, but they needed them as injury cover kind of last minute, so they basically flew them up.
Mm.
If anyone can remember who the hell that was, let us know in the comments. Johnny, all right, well, let's talk about Leinster Glasgow now.
Oh, let's
open by saying, I mean, it wasn't the strongest Leinster team.
It wasn't. That is fair, but it wasn't a total joke Leinster team. Like,
tell me it's not the strong. Tell me it's not the strongest Leinster team by not telling me it's the strongest Leinster team. What's his name?
Larmour was in it.
Yeah.
Jordan Larmour was playing. Harry Byrne was playing.
Ollie Kebble ran for 20 metres. Yeah, okay.
Don't you disrespect Ollie Kebble in my presence.
You could say Jordan Larmour was playing. You could say Byrne was playing and just not specify which Byrne, and you might.
Yeah,
not so Slim Shady will not be disrespected in my presence, Craig Manson. That was incredible, and he was so excited that he couldn't decide.
He was totally thinking about the chip,
and he just did none of them at the same time.
Just for everyone, for everyone who's listening, okay. If we have a group chat, and I've never heard so many scathing comments about Edinburgh, and then so many Suki bumlick comments about Glasgow in a group chat in my entire life. And the thing is, we both got the win at the weekend. I was quite happy for Glasgow. They got a win at the weekend. That's pretty good. Even though if it was a third string Leinster side. But we'll never hear the end of it.
It won't matter by the end of the season, though. It'll be.
That's true, yeah.
I was relieved that Edinburgh got a win at the weekend because it didn't look like they were going to.
First 25 minutes, yeah, you were thinking.
I used a lot of podcast language to describe Edinburgh's performance on Saturday.
To be honest, you were just thinking about me walking on the railway tracks. You know what I mean?
Like, okay, and it was far from a frontline Leinster team, but we always say that the thing about Leinster is that it's their coaching and their patterns and their how well drilled they are and how well they know everything and how great a job they do of just plugging somebody in if somebody's missing. So the fact that it wasn't their first choice players, it doesn't take away that much from the fact that Glasgow
they are without a coach.
I was going to say it wasn't their first choice coaching team either.
No, because Jacques Niebaer's still at the World Cup, and Stuart Lancaster. Stuart Lancaster is he not? Stuart Lancaster's back in France.
Yeah, he's away at Racing.
Jacques Niebaer's not a starter, Jack.
And anyway,
he's over in France.
The person who's technically in charge is the spitting image King Charles, Leo Cullen, and he was there.
Was there anything in that game, John? I mean, obviously Stafford McDowell played very well, as he always does. There was a few of the Scotland team back. Was there anything you looked at in that game that made you think like Glasgow would likely take a step up this season, or was it a bit of a one-off kind of you caught Leinster on a bad day? Because I'll be honest, I couldn't make my mind up from watching the game.
It hurts me to say this, right? Because I love him very deeply. But after 4 weeks of watching in the World Cup, one thing that I came away from that game thinking is, how is Glasgow Hugh Jones so much different to Scotland Hugh Jones? Because he was great on Sunday and he was charitably not for a lot of the World Cup.
The thing is, though, I mean, he was great in the Six Nations too. But yeah, he was weak in the World Cup. But he was Glasgow Hugh Jones in the Six Nations for a lot of it.
Yeah,
you can't even credit Sione because he was still on the weekend.
No, exactly, and I'm still confused as to why the whole Jamie Dobie playing 60 minutes at scrum half and then 20 minutes on the wing thing is happening. But it's working, so I'm not going to complain about it. I think Glasgow are probably where they were at the end of last season. But where they were at the end of last season is a whole lot better than where they were at the start of last season. So if they're continuing to go forwards, then maybe by the end of the season, we are going to be even better. It's difficult to tell after one game. Like you say, it's Leinster thirds.
Yeah. Oh, and
but they haven't. There doesn't seem to be any regression, so that's a positive, I think.
Well, that's true. There's no difficult kind of second season syndrome for Glasgow.
I think Glasgow will be in top four this season. I think they're going to do a good job. I think they did what they needed to do this weekend, and just you say, I'm concerned about Hugh Jones. I don't know what's going on, but on the other side of things, Ollie Kebble's has realised that there's an opportunity for him to play back for Scotland again. So he's trying his best to get back in there.
It was honestly the highlight of my weekend was seeing Ollie Kebble back. Angus Fraser was a bit of a revelation. He played really well.
He was good, yeah,
for being quite early in his professional career. He was really good.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. It's like I know Fraser Brown's writing columns for the newspapers and stuff during the World Cup, but he's still planning to come back and play. But I can't see him.
He's on the books still, as far as I know. But then so are George Turner and Johnny Matthews, and now Angus Fraser. So I don't really see where he fits in.
Maybe it's a similar thing
we now
for Scotland,
think maybe Johnny's going to be away on the Scotland camps, and so's George Turner, and we might need a second hooker. But I don't know.
Willie really.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Scotland World Cup standout Johnny Matthews. Yes, of course he will.
Scotland World Cup.
World Cup try scorer Johnny Matthews.
Yeah.
Like, did he not play one game?
Doesn't matter.
One game,
Doesn't
one
matter,
try.
Craig. Tries to try.
Decent record.
He played one. He
As
played
many
one try
international tries
because,
as you, Craig Madsen.
and he played one game, Craig, because one Embra hooker fell down some stairs
And then got one
allegedly,
Allegedly.
and another Embra hooker turned his neck badly. So Johnny Matthews had to come from holiday in Fife.
Hey,
Yep.
listen, he was
He was
the coat, the coat to Weems.
Listen, I've said it before and I'll say it again. The best ability is availability. And if you cannot correctly walk down a flight of stairs and someone else takes your job, that's your problem.
Well, you got to remember, Alan Dell is the most successful prop on the Alliance tour.
And Lions history, 100%
Yeah.
scrum success rate.
So there you go.
There you go. Just seen amazing news, and this kind of backs up the Johnny Matthews thing, is that Scotland have, despite the fact we're now at the final, right? Even though this is the final weekend of the World Cup, Scotland made the third most clean breaks at the World Cup, which is incredibly funny to me. New Zealand on 81, France on 55, Scotland on 45, Ireland 44, and Argentina 38. We are going to end up in third place because South Africa are nowhere near.
Unless Argentina makes 7 against England.
They don't count. Surely they don't count third place matches for stats.
I
don't get
think
capped in
it
a third
technically
place
does
match, do
count
you?
as a game, even though no one believes it.
No one believes it. If nobody watches it, does it actually happen?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if Sam Underhill falls in a forest in his first World Cup appearance and no one's around to watch it because it's in the third place game, does he make a noise?
I've got a more extreme version of that for the Patreon about Tom Curry, but that's a different story.
Yeah, we might pick up on the Tom Curry thing in there. I see the RFU taking a leaf out of our book on Twitter and just gone full don't back down,
they've
double down.
gone full double down.
Yeah,
Double down.
it's like
Double down World
despite
Cup.
days and days of South Africans telling everyone what the Afrikaans word for side is on Twitter, the RFU have decided to go, nope, we're just going to ignore all that and say that he definitely
This
was
is
racially
definitely what
abused.
Yeah.
And
Let's be. This is rugby union, gentlemen. No one's speaking anything other than the Queen's English. So I'm afraid that actually that's not what you said. Honestly, what a bunch of.
who's in the
I
RFU
stopped
as well?
myself there.
Christ.
I know.
Imagine
Honestly,
being told
it's
you're
an emba-
racist
it's-
by
at
the
this point, it's
RFU. That's
embarrassing.
like,
I love the fact it's like, no, we're not racist. You're racist. Now let me put on my stripy trousers and my blazer.
yeah,
We know
While
a
I sing
racist when
Swing
we
Low,
see
Sweet
one, and you're
Chariot.
definitely one.
yeah.
We've got a bit of
We're standing
experience in the area of being racist, and we've decided you're racist.
Well,
Even though you're telling
takes
us
one
you
to know, and
speak a
that's is the
different
old
language.
expression.
That's not racist. It's xenophobic. Anyway, is there any more on the main on the main podcast this week? I think we've kind of picked up everything we need to pick up on. There's not been
I
any
think
other
you've forgotten about the World Rugby's third giant piece of news, in addition to the World League and the extended Rugby World Cup, and that is that they've invented a new sport. I don't know if you saw this. It's called.
Is it Rugby X?
No, it's called T1, and it's basically it's like touch rugby. The touch rugby that I play is based on rugby league. It's very obviously just like rugby league without tackling. There's no kicking. So World Rugby have come up with touch rugby that's rugby union. So it has scrums, which are not scrums because you just stand around holding hands. It has line outs, but you're not allowed to jump. So you basically just throw it to someone in the line out. It has kicking, but you can't kick high because there's no challenging for the high balls. So the referee decides who wins the ball, but you can grubber it if there's two people competing for the ball. And it has a ruck, which is two people stand behind the person who's been tackled, so that you know where the offside line is. You make a triangle and the back line of the triangle. Other than that, it's kind of touch rugby, but
So
it looks a lot slower than like touch
Why?
rugby is a fast game.
So
T1
that's
looks
what
cool.
It
rugby's
sounds like
going
a lot
to
of
be
the
when all the
conditions-
lawsuits come in.
Yeah, basically, But I guess they're looking for people to have like a route into the game that's non-contact, but is more like.
What's wrong with touch? This is the thing. My kid plays touch, and it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly good as a way of kind of like, here's a defensive line, and here's how you run forward, and here's how you score tries.
Here's how you I mean, the skills that players are lacking is, drawing your man and passing at the right timing your pass and passing into space and all that stuff, and not grabbing.
How does that differ from tartan touch that the SIU invented?
I don't know. Tartan touch has got kicking as well, isn't
basically,
it?
it's like Rory's kind of touch. It's like rugby league touch. That T1.
Yeah, but there are some. I think it's got kicking, is it not?
Tartan touch, no. That T1 sounds like
it's pretty similar, but it's not the
training.
Yeah.
The only thing about tartan touch is that you basically have to have kids playing and nobody enjoys it.
Yeah, it's
essentially. They talk about how it's great fun, but the kids are scared because there's big people running around them, and the big people are frustrated because you can't play proper touch.
Because you look mean if you sidestep an 8-year-old.
Exactly.
You goose step an 8-year-old.
Yeah, exactly. And then your development officer takes a bunch of photos, and the SRU says everyone's having a great time, and it's a lie. And
everyone goes back to playing tag rugby.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah. There's also
then as soon as the 6 weeks of mandated tartan touch are over, we're like, right, so we'll just continue touch just for the adults, though. Yeah, great, perfect. But yeah, that thing that Rory's described sounds like whenever you're at the end of training and the coaches are like, right, we're going to play touch with a couple of conditions, and you all go, oh, no, please, no.
You should watch the video.
2 people have got to make a ruck, beat it.
Yeah. There's if you get touched, it's weird. If you get touched, you have to turn around and present the ball back like you're on a revolving, and you just give it, and then the scrum half picks it out of your hands and passes it away.
I've done that particular condition touch before. It's garbage.
I've played touch league where you had to kind of you got touch and you put it behind you kind of put it behind your legs. Roll it. It's rugby league. Yeah. It sounds like the.
And then we've done the one where the 2 tacklers have got to do a burpee, and then you make an offside line. I hate it so much. Condition touch is
somewhere between.
It sounds more like T1.
I say it sounds like the rugby touch equivalent of the cones of Dunshire or Numberwang.
Yeah.
What a reference! That's another great reference.
Yeah. Try and make it as complicated. What is a simple game to like increase skills as complicated as possible?
I think it's funny because it like normal touch is quite straightforward, but it doesn't have the features of union. It doesn't have the scrums line outs, but it's like they've put things that they're calling a scrum and a line out in there, but they're going to make no difference other than a way of this is how. I mean, I guess they might make space. I think it's a 7-a-side game, but it's designed to be expanded or contracted.
Rugby want to do everything they can to somehow to just destroy sevens and pretend it never existed.
Yeah,
I think it's an Irish conspiracy to try and kind of erase Scotland from rugby history. That's why they keep trying to get rid of sevens. We'll take it on a tour of the world so nobody can watch it, and then we're going to try and introduce a new version of the sport with 7 players and call it something different.
Yeah. T1, T1 in 5 years, T1 will just be called sevens.
T2 Judgment Day.
Well, that's it. We've already been talking in our touch group chat how we can change the rules to make it more fun.
Yeah, I mean, you stick a T1000 in there, that's instantly more fun.
Yeah,
everyone has
to
run
yeah, I mean, there's some other World Rugby stuff we might get onto in the Patreon. They've announced some stuff. They've had consultants looking at numbers, which are quite interesting. So we might touch on that in the Patreon podcast as well. Obviously, we've got the Scotland. What? Sorry.
He said, "Was it Jiffy? He loves numbers."
It was Jiffy does love numbers. It wasn't Jiffy. Jiffy wasn't commissioned to do this. It was one of these kind of consultant companies that made up of just posh surnames. But we'll touch on that in the Patreon podcast. We'll be back next week for the main podcast. We'll talk about the WXV2. The URC's on again this weekend.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the Rugby World Cup final because that's still a thing. That's still going on.
Is that on?
Apparently so, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not seen much coverage of it.
There's Scottish qualified Finlay Christie and Edinburgh reject Quagga Smith playing in the final, so we have to talk about it.
There is lots of Scottish interest there. So yeah, we'll be back next week. If you're watching live for the Patreon, hang about and we'll do the Patreon pod in a minute. But for the moment, it is goodbye from me and goodbye from Craig, Rory, and Johnny.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye all.